Today we are doing part 4 of the series in editing car photos or any of the photos, because all these tools translate over to each other. But for now, we are going to add style to our photos. So what we're going to do here is we are going to take a look at our S-curves, hue, saturation, and luminance. We're going to do some split toning, add sharpness and clarity if you'd like, and then we're going to export. So what I've done here is I actually have a photo that I was using earlier that I've posted to my Instagram. Shameless plug, go check it out at The Car Creative on Instagram. What you can do here on Lightroom is you can actually use a reference photo. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to drag and drop this photo that I want to make this photo look like. Everyone just has their own style, and so it's okay however you want to do this, but I'm going to teach you is just some of the ways that I do it, and hopefully you can learn from that in creating your own individual style. Again, a lot of it comes down to vision at the beginning of the photo. If you want a bright, sunny photo, you're gonna edit it a lot different than if you want a dark, moody photo, which is what I'm going for. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna start with my S-curve. I find the S-curve, yes, you can use it for exposure, but I'm using it for style and to add some fade to my photos. You can do so many crazy things with this. If you're having a hard time creating your own points, you maybe have to come down to here and click on this button. And sometimes if you're getting this, you don't want this, you want to be able to create all of your own custom points. So just click on this one here and you'll be able to create your own. I'm going to start with my S-curve. So on this tone curve dial here, you can pull this down, and what this top point does is it deals with your highlights, the bottom points deal with your shadows, and any of the points that you put in between are going to affect, the midtones if you put one right in the middle, so on and so forth. Something that a lot of people use a tone curve for is to create an S-curve, and what this does is it adds contrast, so it brings your highs a little bit higher and your shadows a little bit lower, and it just adds a little bit more pop. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Put points here, here, and here, and they're going to drag this top one up a touch, and you can see that it's adjusting everything above the midtones. We've clicked a point here to protect the midtones, and what you can do is drag that up or down based on what you want. A lot of people will just drag that up a little bit just to maintain those midtones not going anywhere, since you've already got the photo exposed more or less how you want. And again, they'll drag this third curve down, adding a bit of contrast there. So that's a great way to add an S-curve, but what I'm going to use it for is creating my own style, which I like to protect the highlights by dragging those down. I like to add a touch of fade, and as you can see here, there's a little bit of a percentage. I tend to not go too high because it kind of gets a bit too muddy in that faded zone, and that's not really my style. And then from there, I just kind of play with the image until I get the right amount of contrast that I'm looking for. And again, for this image specifically, I'm just going to try and mirror a little bit of what we're doing over here by adding the right amount of contrast, keeping that fade, and then just playing around with these to get the right mood that I'm looking for. I think I like what I'm seeing there. So it's a very subtle S-curve, but it does the trick. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to look into is split toning. Essentially what you can see on my reference image here is that it's got those blue tones, and I want to get those same blue tones into this photo here. So if we scroll down, we're going to get to our split toning panel. Now what I tend to use is everyone has their own numbers here, but you never really want to go too high. But the ones that I use is specifically in my shadows, I hit 220 in my hue. And what that does is it's taking this blue color and it's adding, on the hue wheel, any of these different tones. And if you've ever seen an Instagram that, everyone's got the same color palette going through their whole Instagram, this is likely one of the tools that they use to get that. Now for me, I usually land around the 220 mark. You want to be really subtle with how you use this. Now, I'm trying to match the colors over here, so I'm just going to use those as reference, and I know I use the same color temperatures over here. So I'm just going to continue to use that until they look similar. And again, I'm going to go up into my highlights and just make sure that those are matching as well. Now, what I'm noticing here is that it's coming across just a little bit too blue, and I'm not going to reduce these. I'm actually just going to reduce the saturation on the entire image just to make sure that it's coming across steely, moody, blue, but not too blue, and that the colors are still matching between these two images, so that if I posted them side by side, they would look really good. So I think landing there looks pretty good. And I'm happy with that. It's not too crazy, it's not too in your face, no nothing. One thing I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and bring out the brightness of those brake calipers. So in this hue and saturation thing, I'm going to try and bring that back up so that we're not losing that detail. And in the luminance panel, bringing some brightness back into those. You can see that that really is only affecting that one part. So that looks pretty good to me. Let's see where we came from. Looking nice and moody. We'll bring the saturation down a little more. Okay, now if we continue down on your panel here, what we're gonna do is add sharpening to our image. Now, I like doing this a lot because you can add sharpening just to the specific parts that you want. I tend to go anywhere from that second to third notch up here. And what you do here is you hold Option, click on masking, and you can drag this along. Now what this is doing here is it's actually showing you the parts of your image that you're sharpening. And the farther you drag this along, it's just gonna follow the lines of your image and sharpen just what you want. So you can mask out sharpening a lot of things. Now I'm going to try and just sharpen the vehicle and the surrounding area without getting too much of the road. And I think landing somewhere in here is a good spot because we're sharpening our wheels, we're sharpening the front grille, the doors, some of the buildings, but we're not getting really too much of the road or the side panels, just adding grit for no necessary reason. So there you go, you can play around with your sharpening in that way and mask out certain things that you don't really want to sharpen. And lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in here and just, you can see that through this whole process of upping your shadows and exposure and adding all these different tools, you can get a little bit of noise in your image. And if you're not using a very high quality camera, like the A7 III is a full frame, it handles noise like a champion. But in the past, I was using a Sony a6500, and this camera, once you added any ISO, they would just get so much noise in the image. So in this part, you can come down to this noise reduction, and you can just click that up as much as you want until you get rid of as much noise as you want. Now, be careful using noise reduction, specifically on humans. It starts to look really gross. So I tend to not actually go anywhere above that second notch if you can help it. Specifically with humans. With cars, you can get away with it a little bit more. So throw that noise reduction on there if you'd like. And lastly, if you'd like, you can add some vignetting or grain if you're into that style of image. But for me, I'm pretty happy with where this is coming along. I might add a few more tweaks to just bring more attention to the car. Like with this graduated filter, I might bring this down just a touch more, make it a bit more moody. Same here. Just to draw your eye to the car. And it's got a bit darker with that S-curve, so I'm just gonna bring this up a touch just to make sure I'm not losing any details in the car. I just wanna see everything. And that's it. That's it, guys. Like, we've added so much style to the photo. If you look at where we come from over here, this is where we started from. This basic image, not really any style, no detail in it at all. We switched it to this, and then in the end, you bring it over here, you add style, you add some attention to the car, and it's a pretty cool image. So I'm happy enough with this for now. There's of course so much that you guys can do in Lightroom and Photoshop to create style with yours. But this is the way I do it, and I hope that you guys have learned something through this process and that you can take some of these tools and do it with your own car. And the last thing that we're gonna do, guys, is just export this photo. If you are intentionally posting this on Instagram, you can come up and do a final crop, and you can just change it to 4:3. That'll adjust it for Instagram, and you won't have to do any cropping later on. Adjust that to wherever you want, but for me, I tend to just leave it how it is so that you can use this for wallpapers on your phone, which is longer than Instagram, etc. And I just push it out like this. So I just come up here, File, Export. You can save it to wherever you want to save it to. That is how I add style and dimension to my photos through these 4 videos. I've shown you the basics. I've shown you how I remove objects and soften out the sides of the cars using some of the cool tools in Photoshop. I've shown you how we do dodging, burning, highlighting, and bringing attention to our subject or drawing attention away using those filters on the top and the bottom. And then lastly, adding style using our curves. You can use hue and saturation, and just following our vision of this other photo that I had on Instagram. You can do some pretty cool stuff. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope that you learned something from it. If I missed something, guys, like I keep saying, put it in the comments below. I'd love to know some of the tools that you guys use and how you edit your photos. Let's start a conversation down there. If you guys enjoyed this, I would love to make more videos for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. So thanks for sticking around, guys, and we will see you in the next one.